Hey Art Snackers, welcome back to Hot in the Shop. This is a series where we take a closer look at amazing products available in the Art Snack Shop. My name's Jenny and I'm a mixed media artist. In today's video, I have some tips and tricks for you when you're using colored pencils. And stick around to the end of the video because I know you're going to love these pencils and I'll tell you how you can get them for 15% off. Let's get our surface ready. How do you pick the right one? Well, when in doubt, look for a paper that says it's made for colored pencil, like the Lenox Cotton Paper Pad by Legion Paper. This paper is 100% cotton and works wonderfully across a range of fine art applications, especially colored pencils, graphite, pastels, and charcoal. And let me do a handy transition and get our sketch on the page. I want to give this piece more of a coloring page look, so I'm using the Copic Multiliner CS to line my artwork. Specially developed for calligraphy purposes, this pen has a 2mm tip that's ideal for intricate, detailed expressions. The black pigment ink is waterproof and Copic proof when dry. I like it because I can get bold lines on this 9x12 paper but still get a little variety and quality of line just by using different angles of the tip. Not all colored pencils are created the same. You'll want the richest, most pigmented colors for your piece. In this video, I'll be mostly using the Faber-Castell Polychromos colored pencils. Renowned for their high-quality pigments, these pencils deliver unsurpassed light fastness and permanent, rich color. While buttery smooth, they hold their point longer than other pencils, which makes for beautifully sharp lines. As I lay down the first layer or two of pencil on this flower, I want to point out a few tips that I found are really helpful and kind of work together. First of all, you'll want to work with sharp pencils. A sharp pencil can get into the valleys of the tooth of the paper easier than a dull pencil. While applying the color, use a light pressure. This is just your base color and you'll want to add more colors, so make this one as light as possible. If you find that you naturally come in with a heavy hand, try holding the pencil farther back, at least halfway if not farther. You can't help but loosen up a bit with the pencil in this position. Another thing to take into consideration is the direction of your stroke. Instead of making linear strokes back and forth, try laying down circular or oval marks. This will give you an overall even look. I want these petals to look fairly smooth with little texture, so I'm laying down an even layer of color. So far, I've only been using the magenta polychromos on this big main flower, but the beauty of colored pencil is you can add subtle color shifts. For this piece, I'm also using a few of the Chameleon Color Tones colored pencils. These highly pigmented, ultra-smooth pencils feature a different color on each end. The two hues are expertly paired together so you can achieve the perfect color harmony. I'm using them to supplement some lighter colors that I don't have among my polychromos stash. The lychee color in these Chameleon pencils pairs perfectly with the polychromos magenta. And I'm not applying it to each entire petal, just what I want to be the brightest spots. I love pairing purples and yellows together. It's my favorite complementary color combination. So let's offset that big giant magenta flower by making these smaller flowers a golden yellowy color. So I'm using a polychromos cadmium yellow over all of the petals, and then the dark cadmium yellow around what I feel would be the most intense yellow of the flower. And that's pretty much across the middle of each petal, and if we can see an underside of a petal, it goes there too. The base color for the stems and leaf is the polychromos light green. And I'm putting in a little bit of green in the bottom of the glass to reflect those stems. Emerald green works great for the midtones on all the greenery. Colored pencil is a slow process medium. It takes patience and repetition, but that process can also be meditative. Take a moment or two to practice getting the right pressure and even strokes on a scrap piece of paper before jumping into your piece. I know what it's like to just want to get going, believe me, but give yourself a chance to slow your mind down. A few moments on a practice sheet really lets your brain connect with your hand. And I'm coming in with the pine green to start defining those shadows. The stems and the leaf were really the least time consuming, so I think once I was on those, I decided to follow them through all the way to the darker tones. Back up to the purple flower, I gave the manganese violet polychromos pencil a try, but I quickly decided I didn't like the direction that color was going in, so I used it a little bit, but not very much. So after that, I went back to just treating the petals with a combination of Chameleon lychee and polychromos magenta. After the first layer or two of color, you will naturally start applying more pressure. Just be careful that you don't press too hard. Pressing too hard gets you into burnishing, which is one of the final steps, and we're not quite there yet. You can spend a really long time on these middle tones, and colored pencil allows you to get into fine details, which makes it great if you're wanting to do photorealistic work. On a coloring page like this though, when we're really relying on the lines to communicate our subject matter, I think it's really fun to blend with the colors, see how they work with each other, without feeling like it has to be perfect. To really deepen some of those tones, I came in with the red violet and Delft blue. With all those other colors in place for the darkest shadows, I'm coming in with dark indigo. You could just as easily use black for the shadows. A lot of experts will tell you not to use black because it makes the piece look flat. However, I don't necessarily agree with that. I just think sometimes it's just way too stark of a dark color. A color like dark indigo just lends itself to an easier transition into a really dark shadow. As I'm completing each petal, I am using more and more pressure with each layer. And with the final layers, because I'm adding more pressure, I do naturally sort of burnish the area that I'm laying down color. Burnishing is a technique used to basically finish off an area of colored pencil. You can use a colorless blender to do that. Some people like to use a blending stump. You can also use white in a lot of situations. However, I don't plan on changing the color of these petals, and I've already got a lot of rich color down anyway. So I'm naturally sort of burnishing and blending these colors together as I'm finishing them up on these petals. When you're working on something that's naturally lighter in value, you do need to use something like a white colored pencil, or you don't want to add any more color to it. So you're going to have to finish that off and blend it all together smoothly in other ways. That's when a white color pencil comes in handy, or a colorless blender. Now, that's not to say you can't add any more layers of color. I mean, you can. I certainly try. But once it's burnished, you're just not going to get very many layers over it. And you gotta be careful with how far you take it, because you could get to the point where you start to rip the surface of your paper. All right, let's finish up those yellow flowers. In the very middle of each of those flowers, those are all getting treated with some burnt sienna. And then I'm bringing in more dark cadmium yellow. For the darkest shadows on the centers of the flower, I'm using my trusty dark indigo. I'm building up the color of each petal with burnt ochre and a smidge of dark cadmium orange. And I just keep working back and forth with those colors. This naturally tends to blend the colors together and intensify the look that I want in those areas. I'll give a little more attention with the leaf and the stems, going back and forth through all of those greens. And you gotta know I'm gonna count on that dark indigo to handle the shadows. Okay, it is time to address that glass jar. And remember earlier how I mentioned paying attention to how you were laying down the color? Well, I'm still using a really light pressure, but instead of using a circular motion, I am actually putting down my lines in slightly curved horizontal marks. And that's because this glass kind of looks that way. So you can use your mark making to emphasize the texture of what you're representing. You just have to be aware of the overall look that the marks make together on the full page. And if you're wondering what base color I'm using for the jar, it's Cool Gray 5. I'm also adding a light layer of light ultramarine. And for the darkest parts, let's say it all together now, dark indigo. And I use the Cool Gray 5 and dark indigo to add a shadow. I hope you've enjoyed this video. All the supplies I've used today can be found in a link in the description box below. And to get 15% off these select products, just use coupon code HOT15 at checkout. While you're here, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe for more videos, join us for free over on Mix, and follow ArtSnacks on social media.